All right, you guys are live on YouTube and it's recording. And Ren, do you want to take over as host right now, or do you want me to wait till Fred comes back and I'll make him host?
Oh, I'm back. I'm back.
Okay, Fred, I'm going to make you host. There you go.
Okay.
Okay, I don't believe we have a quorum unless there's some other people not on the, let me bring them in here.
Yeah, and the meeting hasn't started yet, as you know. Just,
All right, Tess, here we go. We're going to move her to panelist. Bob, panelist.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Oh, yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Let's see, we're missing Mark. Oh, Brandon's here, okay. Matt Kamen is no longer with us. Lee Jameson, oh, here's Mark. So we're just, is Barry Livingston Lee Jameson, or is that someone else? No, maybe someone else.
So Matt is no longer with us?
No, he went to the, what did he go to, Colby?
Outreach?
yes, he's
Okay.
going to co-chair outreach with,
Okay.
temporarily, or co-chair, and then he'll take over chair, I think, eventually. Catherine's helping with that.
All right, well, it's 6:32. We're just missing Lee Jameson. So I guess I'll call the meeting to order. 6:32. Welcome, everyone. Tonight, I have suffered a migraine headache, so I'm very sensitive to light, and I do not have my video for that reason, in case anyone's wondering, but I'll still do my best to try to coordinate the meeting. So with that, let's go into roll call. And we have Ren Blight
Here.
here. Fred Iberry is here. Tess Taylor.
Here.
Mark Stevenson.
Here.
Bob Scabelli.
Here.
Ron Babini.
Here.
And I'll put Lee, I guess, excused for now, and Brandon Whalen.
Here.
Here. Okay. So we have a quorum, and welcome everybody. Let's go into item number 3 for the minutes. And we have motion A to approve the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council April 11th, 2022 Plum Committee minutes.
First, Tess.
We're first. Okay, thank you, Tess.
Second, Ren.
And thank you. Okay, do we have any discussion?
One tiny item, young Fred, I hope you feel better soon.
Thanks, Tess.
I would like to reiterate my request that under the state legislative agenda, when that we make these items, and I'm very happy to see the city file, the city planning case numbers. Yay. I hope that they will become hot links or hyperlinks, and then slightly more detail with the legislative bills that we're tracking, just so people, I mean, we have 1 or 2 words there, and perhaps this request of mine will be obviated when we have that running list of projects and bills that we're tracking, the spreadsheet that I forwarded Fred, and it wasn't uploaded properly to be included with meeting documents. So if the committee is amenable, we could perhaps display it later if there's time. So my comments are just slightly more detail and less until we have that meeting document that goes with them. Thank you.
Okay, you got it, Tess. I took notes for that, and we will make those changes going forward. And Brandon has his hand up. Go ahead, Brandon.
Thanks. The motion C, Ren, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, didn't you have an amendment specifically talking about hours of operation? I don't know if that needs to be reflected in this, but I just remember it wasn't just to support, it was with the caveat.
Oh, yeah, Brandon is right.
Yep.
Yes, good catch, Brandon. And
Okay.
Ren got a haircut. All right.
Okay, so thank you for that. Should we go on to a vote? To approve the minutes? Okay, Ren Blight.
Hold on, Fred.
Oh.
Hold on.
Sorry.
I want to make sure though that it's specific about the time that's in the minutes. Let's make sure we hear clearly what that was before we vote.
Okay, let's repeat it one more time, if you don't mind.
I don't remember the time frame. Ren, do you?
I might,
I don't have it in front of me.
if you give me 1 second, I can stand by. Let's see.
This is Bob. My recollection that the board passed on this with that caveat. So
Yes.
we might check their minutes and,
Sorry, is this the car wash?
Yes.
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
that's what I saw.
Okay.
I thought it was 8. Yeah,
7
good.
a.m. to 8 p.m. No queuing.
Thank you.
Good
Okay.
catch, Brandon.
Got that, thank you. Okay. So should we move to a vote? All right,
Yes.
let's do that, thank you. Ren Blight,
Yes, as amended.
yes, as amended. Mark Stevenson,
Yes, as amended.
yes, as amended, okay. Fred Ibarry, yes, as amended. Bob Scabelli,
Yes, as amended, yes.
Brandon Whalen. Brandon,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
okay. Ron Babini,
Yes.
okay, and let me just check if Lee has shown up. 1 second. No. All right, and Tess Taylor.
Yes, as amended. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeses. And then if Lee's not here, then what does that count? Just as a 0 or abstain, or just as a 7-0-0?
Yeah, just not counted. So 7. Yeah.
7-0-0. Okay, the motion carries. Next, we go to item number 4, public comment. And we have some speakers here, excuse me, we have some attendees here. 4 attendees are with us tonight. And if you have any comments, please raise your hand. First person, David Wheatley. Go ahead, David.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your steadfastness in showing up to this important committee month after month. So bravo for that. Also, very good to hear and see more of these bills that are coming down the pike from Sacramento. Very good to see these on here. I concur with the need for links, but still, this is a big step forward. I think I had suggested last time that we needed state laws. Should be thankful for that, and I am, but it raises a question about federal laws and any other laws, county, city laws that are coming towards us, because they affect us almost more than the smaller stuff that we deal with here. I'm interested in knowing, in terms of Cahuenga Bloomfield, that everybody's had a chance to drive by and see how out of scale it is. And as a reminder that this is one of the committees, along with the neighborhood council, that approved this. And I really think we should find out how that happened. Were there conflicts of interest, people benefiting from putting this on there that cast their vote in order to enrich themselves or others? I think we need to have an investigation of that here and on the neighborhood council, and why this project was passed with no opposition at all. It wasn't sent back to allow time for opposition. It was just put through this huge thing. And I think there are people on this board presently that were on the board then. And I think we need to get to the bottom of that and find out who was on the board then, who voted what, and run background checks on their economic situations at the time, or how they might have benefited, or their friends might have benefited at the time. Also, these developers and the city are neglecting our society and our community, and it's hard to track neglect. We can we can track abuse, but neglect, well, what it is it really? What are they really supposed to be doing to protect us? And what is this committee supposed to be doing to protect us? Well, I think it's doing the best they can, but obviously it's not enough. Coanga Bloomfield went through, and these other ones are coming down the pike too. It's going to take a lot more work. I applaud the work that's being done, but it's going to take a lot more, and we're going to need to send for reinforcements, and the cavalry better show up soon. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, David. And I still have 30 seconds left. Jonathan Gregory, go ahead.
Hi, thanks very much. My comments are about the agenda itself. When I see that you're taking time to talk about certain subjects, as you are on this agenda, you're using the word, like, for example, legislation to be tracked. To me, it's a waste of time because legislation moves very quickly, suddenly, and almost clandestine in the city of Los Angeles and in the state. And what's happened, I'm going to remember you the night that Michael from the restaurant having to do with the post office location called in, and he was looking for a statement of support from the board. Well, there is no statement of support other than the board voting on a motion. And since the motion wasn't on the agenda, anything the board did was nothing more than talk, because you can't do anything unless you have it on the agenda. So for example, some of these things you're talking about, hopefully in the best interests of the stakeholders, you're not positioned, you're not poised to do anything about the conversation unless you actually have a motion on the agenda that you can vote on that reflects a position in defense of the interests of the stakeholders. So what I'm saying is it's moving really slowly by handling it like this. By the time you actually, because you only have once a month meetings, by the time you actually make a motion and then you do your dance of sending it to the, how do you call it, the general meeting, you're already like 5 months out. So it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And you've all been here longer than me. I've been watching these meetings for just 9 months or so, but I can see that this tends to be the repetitive motion, is to talk about things. And it was real clear when Michael from that restaurant came that you were completely unequipped to do anything about what was perceived as the interests of the stakeholders of Greater Toluca Lake. And every time you write an agenda that looks like this, you're not outfitted to do anything. You're just outfitting yourselves to have idle conversation. And by the time you get it onto an agenda to do your dance of making a motion, it isn't happening. It just simply isn't happening. This neighborhood council is not putting out statements, motions that reflect community impact statements having to do with legislation that protects the interests of the stakeholders. It's barely doing any. So I recommend that you change the format of your agendas to include motions when you're talking about subjects as important as zoning. Thank you.
Okay, noted. Jonathan Gregory, thank you so much. And anyone else would like to speak? Here we go. Tess, go ahead.
I look at the agendas of a lot of other neighborhood councils, especially ones that are adjacent to us. And I too would like to see more action orientation. And the way it's generally phrased is proposed a discussion and proposed action on X. And that means that action could take place. We could do something, but it will be discussed. So, and I reiterate my willingness to volunteer and help create agendas, draft agendas, if you, Fred, and Ren would like. So, and maybe we can move toward action. But then at the same time, a lot of these items, as much as action might be desired, it's not in our hands. So, but again, I'd be happy to help draft agendas and get more action items going where possible. That's it.
Okay, well, all that sounds great, you guys. Thank you so much for the input. And any more comments? Okay, going once, going twice, and no more. Moving on. So we are now to item number 5, which is committee member news and announcements. Would anyone like to say something for news and announcements? Go ahead, Tess.
Okay, I have a bunch of committee events, items, and news and announcements. All right, first, there are 4 events that people may wish to know about. On Saturday, May 14th, the West Toluca Lake Residents Association is having a neighborhood cleanup, 9 a.m. at 11241 Kling Street, free snacks for volunteers. On Wednesday, May 18th at 10 a.m., there's a very, I think, important infrastructure meeting sponsored by the County of Los Angeles Public Works, a discussion of infrastructure, which is a huge topic in this committee. I'm happy to provide details for any and all of these events for those who may have an interest. Ren, I believe it was you who mentioned the Wednesday, May 18th mayoral debate. That is at 7:15 p.m. Does the invitation still stand for people who wish to attend, Ren? Is it happening in person and or via Zoom? I think it's both, right?
Yeah, it's both. And there's been a number of candidate hearings and talks and so forth. I've attended one in person and watched another. But I'd recommend everybody see at least one so they get some sense of who the candidates are.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of debates. So if that invitation is still open, Ren, I would like to attend that. And then the next event on Monday, May 23rd at 6 p.m., the West Toluca Lake Residents Association is having another community meeting. It's at the 11,000 block of Sarah Street in West Toluca Lake. I can provide details for anyone who may be interested. We're discussing, a lot of items that some overlap with this committee. And then last but not least, I'd like to actually add this to legislation that we're tracking. I just heard about this over the weekend. This is City Council File 220158, which grants the city permission to build homeless shelters on properties outside R3, all the zoning. So it because of the way it's worded, it could include building in R1 zones, as long as or during a declared shelter crisis. This is a motion brought forward by council members Bonin, Rahman, and Marquise Dawson. So that's one that we should be looking at. And I think that's it.
Okay.
I might add, we've got the housing element update from city planning. It's look under planningforla.org/hearings. And it's just, if you want the case number, it's CPC 2022-2698-GPA. So if you want to look that up, but that's the housing element hearing, and that should be an interesting confab. Anyway, one more thing to put on your calendar.
Ren, on that note, we're talking about having speakers. I'd love to get someone from LA City Planning to discuss the housing element with us. Is that possible?
Yes,
I'm sure it's possible.
I've left a request to both the planners who are doing our community plan, because I want them to come and brief us if the community plan is not forthcoming in the next month or so. Them to come and brief us on the community plan, but we could also ask them to talk about the housing plan or get other people from planning department to talk to us about housing as well.
Okay, I have a zoning expert I can bring in, and there's a couple people. I guess we can get to that in new business, but I would love to have someone specializing in the housing element discuss that more with us. Okay, thank you.
Good.
Okay, and Brandon, you're next. Go ahead.
Thanks. Two things. One, does anyone have any experience in trying to advocate for like economic development? I know it's like there's not a lot of control there, but just On the corner of the 5-way, the Tahunga, Camarillo, Riverside, in West Toluca Lake, there's a corner. This is literally at the corner of our neighborhood. So it's a commercial area that has a 7-Eleven, a Thai food place. There's a bakery, and then it has and a massage place. But there's 2 vacancies, and they're being spray painted or graffitied, and then one's just like gutted out. I don't know if has I would like to maybe have this as a discussion item for a future meeting to see what kind of things, if we can bring partners in the neighborhood. Like, I don't know if the chamber is interested in this neck of the woods, but just this seems like it goes under the category of neighborhood council to try to revitalize every corner of our neighborhood. So there's that. If you're interested in talking about this offline, of course, with Brown Act restrictions, but if one person is, feel free to reach out to me. The second thing I wanted to ask about, or maybe to have as another agenda item, and Jonathan, I totally hear you about I came up with these after the agenda was posted, but the homeless test, the homeless that are the encampment that's in the Caltrans right of way. I see a lot of discussion items on the various other committees, but not on this committee. And I just wanted to make sure that LASA is reaching out to to those people and stuff, but without having more discussion about but to continue to talk about homeless. I see it talked about in public safety. I see it talked about in government affairs, but we're not talking about planning and land use, which houses folks. So
I'd love to have it on here too. So yeah.
My 2 things.
Okay. May I comment on Brandon's items? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. So Brandon, brilliant. And in terms of your business development district, I was actually thinking this exact same thing, because at the northeast end of West Toluca Lake, there is also a cluster of businesses and a strip mall. And I'm in touch with at least 7 or 8 of those business owners. And I attended the Toluca Lake Chamber of Commerce barbecue on Saturday and discussed with Vice President Eric Garcia and Shannon Hartman, the president, precisely that. Would you be interested? Could these guys qualify or be included in the Toluca Lake Chamber of Commerce, under their umbrella? To which the answer was a resounding hell yes. So I said, great. In fact, I stopped by one of the businesses this morning, but the owner was not available. So I would love to talk to you more about that, because we know that Studio City has a business district representative. We know that NoHo Arts District has that. And I think we should have that too, whether it's in tandem with the Toluca Lake Chamber of Commerce or not, because our little neighborhood is primarily residential, but still with, those 2 clusters of businesses. I think that's a really good idea. So why don't you and I talk about that offline and develop some ideas, and I'll tell you what I've done already and you can fill me in with you. Okay?
Thanks.
I'm getting a phone call.
Okay,
All right.
good. Anything else?
Nope, that's great.
Great news. Okay, thank you very much, Tess.
All right.
With that, we will move on to item number 6, which is old business. I'll hand it over to Ren at this point for item 6.1. And go ahead, Ren.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I've been in touch with the staff of the city planning department doing our community plan, and they don't seem to be given able to give me much idea of when it's even scheduled to be released, the first draft or the initial draft. So I've now requested that they just do some kind of update, let us know what the issues are that are hanging it up, because clearly, there was a schedule way back when of when these were supposed to be finished, and I just don't want us to get up against the finish line and have the planners give us 2 weeks to do public input. I think we need to, whatever delays they've had so far shouldn't shorten our public input period. So I've mentioned that to them. I will keep mentioning that to them. And ideally, they'll at least come out and spend some time with us, either a special meeting or at one of our regular meetings, to update us on, what the community plan is doing, what the schedule is, and what issues have held it up so far.
Ren, was there a due date for them to have had this to us that they've passed, or what's the date due?
They told us it would be right after the first of the year. So sometime the first 3 months of the year was when it's supposed to be out.
Okay.
Getting to the end of the second quarter, and we still haven't gotten any kind of hint. So, and I can't tell from what little I don't have a lot of friends anymore in the planning department. I can't tell what's hanging it up. So, or at least nobody will tell me. I don't know if there's some big issues there, or whether COVID just slowed everything down to a point where it's just they're trying to catch up. It's hard to tell.
All right.
Moving on, the parking under the freeway on Foreman. Now the city council office has taken that on, and they're not getting a response back. So in one sense, I'm feeling less insulted, but more that they're just sitting on our approval for the designers to go ahead and give us a design. It won't take them that long to do it. From what I get, they can do it in a month or two, assuming they don't have some other big projects that have come in ahead of us, but they can do it relatively quickly. It won't be a big formal engineering kind of study. It really will be something that we can use to take to potential funders and get support from people who want to see the tech, enough information so that they can say, yeah, this will work or this won't work, and this will cost us however many hundreds of millions of dollars, or maybe just a few hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is what I'm hoping. So we'll see, but we need to get the city to move on it, and it's really been frustrating. I've also noticed a couple of other things where the council office is having trouble getting some things out of the city clerk over a period of year or two. So it's not just us, evidently. It's either, I don't think it's even the city clerk versus the city councilman. I think it's something going on in the city clerk's office, and the council needs to address it. But we're stuck, we're stuck waiting for something really simple, and it's not happening.
Okay.
There was a hand raised.
There is a hand raised. Do we want to go through the rest of the agenda items and have public comment after, or do we do public comment now?
I think,
I prefer it during.
yeah,
during
during.
immediately, because there's a lot talked.
Okay, so
we've got Mark for.
Mark to go first, and then Jonathan Gregory. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I'm letting out a big sigh.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I feel like the tail is wagging the dog with city council. So I'm going to have a request. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm so tired of hearing the same issue. And it's, Ren, I'm not frustrated with you. I'm not frustrated with this committee. But it frustrates me that we have talked about this ad nauseum. This has been going on and on and on. So what I would like us to do from now on is on the agenda, I would like the initial date that a project has been brought forward so that we have in parentheses the date that it was brought forward and discussed, so that everybody has a clear picture that this has been going on for at least probably, I would say, 5 years. This is ridiculous, but I think it's important that everybody know that this is not like, hey, we've been discussing this for a year or 2 years. This has been going on for years. So that's my 2 cents at this point. I just wanted to get that out.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And we're going to go to Jonathan Gregory. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I thank you. I think it is a good idea before you leave one subject and go to the other for the sake of efficiency to solicit any comments, because now I'm going to go back to the first part that Ren was talking about, which is the planning. I can't see. Planning community plan. If you recall, if I'm not mistaken, last month when you were talking about the community plan, it arose because we were talking about the merging of the streetscape into the community plan. And then I asked you, is the clock that was $5,000 plus $35,000 or $45,000 more dollars of somebody else that's supposedly in storage in some church, supposedly insured, you were going to get back and find out what was holding it up, or try to figure out a projected date as to where and when. I'm interested in understanding what's going on with this clock, why it fell off of the last, what it just has fallen off again. And it came up through the concept, through the discussion having to do with streetscape, because I thought it was waiting for that. This is just another example of a project that goes on and on and on, but it keeps falling off even from month to month. What Mark was just saying, I completely agree with it. There's not high accountability for this type of stuff. That's my question. What about the clock? What do we learn?
Well, the clock, of course, is not on the agenda. They're waiting to fundraise enough money so they can install it. My understanding is they've had now approval from the city, or are about to. The engineers had to okay the footings for it and all that. They went through a huge Megillah on all the technicalities on it. But my understanding now is that it's just a fundraising issue, and they've got a good part of the money raised. So they're just trying to get the last chunk of money so they can get it done. But
Ren, this is the first time anyone has ever said that the neighborhood council gave $5,000 to a project that was unfunded. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
this is something I've never heard.
The funding was initially for the plans and the overall putting it together, which the money was spent to do that. The $5,000 was there was never an understanding that would get the clock installed. There was always the understanding that there was fundraising involved, and that it would have to wait for the Chamber of Commerce and some other people to step up, and most of those have. So you have to understand that neighborhood council sometimes, or at least in the past, of course, not now, but it used to put money into things to see if they could get put together and see if funding could be found for them and all of that. So there are a number of projects in the community that went forward with some neighborhood council money and money from other sources. And the idea was that they would, try to get them to come to fruition. Those projects, a number of them are still hanging around out there. We have what I call a pocket park on Cahuenga, just for, close to the school, and a number of other things that have been through a number of iterations. and fundraising and so forth and design changes. But they're still out there. I mean, there's still a possibility we'll eventually get a little park in there. And I hope it happens. But until the thing actually breaks ground and goes forward, we can't guarantee that it's real. And of course, this neighborhood council and problems going forward are much less likely to be able to put money into these things because the city council keeps cutting back our funding. And so we need a certain amount of money to operate the GTLNC. And then there's not much money left over anymore for projects. But anyway, the clock is an example of one of the projects, and I think it's likely to get installed in the next, this year, ideally, or soon after. But I can't guarantee that. I'm not doing that part of it. The beautification partners are handling it at this point, so we have to rely on them.
So
I understand, and I'm very surprised at what you're telling me today because it's never been brought up. I appreciate your candor, but this much information was never provided. I can tell you what I understand about the neighborhood grant restrictions is that this is not the type of project that they are authorized for. They're supposed to fall within a time frame, generally a fiscal year, and they're not supposed to be for projects that are not funded, that are not, like you just described in plain English, maybe not. This is very surprising to me, but I appreciate that you spoke it, but there's no information really. I mean, I don't hear anything that's foundational, anything. There's $5,000 that just disappeared just here. And it's very different than a park. This is supposedly sitting in the basement of a church, and this is weird. Thank you.
Okay, before we go to anyone else, we have a caller on the line that's been holding for a while. I think it's Lee, so I'm going to ask the caller to unmute. You've had your hand up. Lee, is that you for 347 with the number ending in 347? Go ahead and talk. All right, well, hello, Lee.
Yes, good evening.
Well, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we're on board. I couldn't get in time about the streetlights on Riverside Drive. Remember, way back, they were going to evenly space across from each other so we could put Christmas line across. That's going back when Brian Alden was with us.
Can we just finish up
I
have a comment on the clocks.
Okay, Lee, thank you very much.
Yes.
We'll come back to that. And we're going to go to Bob now. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, just a little background on the clock. First, the project was never went through this planning committee. There was a presentation made to the neighborhood council by the Chamber of Commerce, the president of the Chamber of Commerce at that time. And he assured us that he had $45,000 in hand, and all he was asking for was another $5,000 to get this off the ground. So I think the question is very appropriate, but not so much for this committee as it is for the neighborhood council. And I would then ask Ryan Altoon, make sure that next week, Ryan Altoon and the president of the Chamber of Commerce are there to address our concerns about what the schedule is and why nothing has happened. I think we have 3 or 4 board members right here in this committee, so take that message, please.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just, I appreciate Jonathan bringing up the issue, but that, to me, the particular issue about the clock has nothing to do with us. That is actually should be addressed by the neighborhood council board. So I hope that is, and I follow what Bob just said. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Go ahead, Tess.
Yeah, so there's actually been quite a lot of money by way of the neighborhood purpose grants. There was $10,000 approved in April of 2019, another $5,000 in May 2020, and $3,000, I don't know if that was for the clock or not, in February of 2021. And there is a consideration with regard to the neighborhood purpose grants, that if the money isn't used for the purpose for which it was granted, that we get it back. But it's never been quite clear when that should occur. And I appreciate fiscal responsibility, that's for sure. So we need to know what's up with that. And if it's not going forward, at what point we get our money back as a neighborhood council. So thank you for bringing that up, Jonathan, and thank you for the detail, Ren. So that money should not go away and disappear if this project does not materialize. That we're being, we're advocating on behalf of residents, stakeholders, and taxpayers. And I, for one, don't want to see that money, not be refunded to us if this project does not come to fruition within an appropriate time frame. So that's it for me.
Okay, I think the best thing would be for Colby to schedule the Beautification Partners President Ryan Altoon to step up at the next meeting and give a status on all of these things, how the money was spent, or if it's still in the hopper waiting to be spent. I can virtually guarantee that the money was not misspent.
Mhm.
It was directed to be spent on something like plans or design work or what have you. It was spent on those things, and I think there's documentation to back that up. But I'll let Ryan describe that and all of that. It disturbs me sometimes to have people pop up with things that have happened years ago, been discussed, and for better or worse, we moved on, and to come back, a year later, 2 years later, and try to stop something from happening, which is about to happen because 2 or 3 years ago the city approved a plan or a project or what have you. I think is trying to drive by looking in your rearview mirror. You can't, it's dangerous and a waste of your time at best. I think we need to be watching forward in whatever projects are coming forward. I have some further discussion I want to have later, but anyway, I'd like to get back to the agenda if we can.
It's a good idea. Okay, we got some more hands up. Let's see, who's next? I guess Tess or Brandon?
I'll lower my hand.
Okay, go ahead, Brandon.
I think all I wanted to say was, in the spirit of doing something and having something on our agenda, if what Bob said needs to be seconded to be a motion to make sure that it's on our agenda, then I'll do so. But yeah, I think we need to continue the conversation. So.
If Brandon, are you talking about the clock?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that shouldn't be on our agenda at all.
Okay.
I'll say it again. That's a neighborhood council issue. And just one last note, when we authorized the $5,000 to give a total of $50,000, Ren, that was for construction, not for plans or anything else. That was the deal. That's how much the clock was going to cost. And we're waiting for them to install it. So it's a fair question that has to be brought to, as you pointed out, to the beautification partners. And I'd like to hear from Shannon too, from the chamber, to see what she knows. So that Brandon, to answer your question, that goes on the neighborhood council agenda.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're heard. If something was talked about, whether it goes in this meeting or not, I don't want it to be brushed.
Well, Jonathan brought it up, but it was never part of this committee.
Sure. Yeah.
But
I
discussed it, never passed on it.
It's my understanding that the president has discretion to create the agenda. So I just want to make sure that it gets on. So thank you.
Okay, Bob, you have your hand up still?
Do I? I'm sorry.
Okay, and then we're going back to Lee. Lee has his hand up. Go ahead, Lee. Lee, you have to press the unmute button. here we go. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, they just said to push star 6. I'm sorry.
Okay, did you want to say something?
That's why I'm saying it's an accident. Sorry about that.
Oh, fine. Okay. Very good. So, any more comments or are we moving on? I think we're going to move on. Okay, 6.2 Foreman Avenue under the 134 bridge. Ren, would you like to say something about
I really
that?
don't care, except for the.
Ren, I think you're on mute.
We already did.
We already did, yeah.
We did.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, I don't know. I haven't heard anything further about this project. Evidently the liquor license request is in process. I don't know that that's been pulled yet or not. Has anyone else heard anything about the status of that liquor license? I think that's the only thing that I'm aware of, administratively that's pending.
Are we talking about 6.3, the Gelson's project?
6.3, yes.
Yeah.
6.3.
Okay.
Sorry.
I have a few minor updates, but not relative to the liquor license. Does anybody else know about the liquor license?
Well, the status as we know it, Tess, is according to Michael, at least, that Gelson is not moving in. So it makes the whole thing moot. But I will stress, that's the only information I have is Michael's information. So.
Well, here's what I know, that he's in communication with Council Member Krikorian of CD2, and that he's got some irons in the fire on that. And they're looking closely at the plans. So that's, he's not comfortable discussing more at this point, but there's some things in the works. And that's all, all on that. I don't know that there's anything further to discuss unless somebody has more on that.
Okay, let's move on. And 6.4 state legislative agenda. We've got a whole laundry list of projects that we're following, and Tess is doing a good job, I think, of kind of outlining the list at this point. Unless someone has a real strong feeling about any one of these pieces of legislation, I think we'll just wait until they get further along in the process. I want to let everyone know that our Assemblyman Nazarian, his deputy, who was kind of our legislative liaison, is left, and there's a new person. And I'm supposed to talk to that person in the next week or so. And Tess, I'll let you know who that is.
Okay. It's not Steve Ferguson, is it? Steve Ferguson is the new district director?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Ferguson. Yeah, that's the name.
Oh, so he's also the legislative guy. Okay.
Legislative liaison at this point. It may be he would.
I have his card.
Okay. Yeah, it may be that he's handling it temporarily until they hire someone else to come in and handle it. It's a full-time job. Anyway, well,
Shall we invite him in our next plum meeting, or should we see what's coming forward first?
I don't understand the question.
Well, should we want to have people like him speak on legislation. Should we have him for our next plum meeting? I think we should, unless there's any objection.
Okay, maybe a good idea. Yeah, it probably would be too soon to have him come in, although I suspect he'll basically say everything's still in the hopper and being considered and not really moving forward. Things typically are not considered serious until they pass out of one committee and go over to the other, either from the Senate to the Assembly or Assembly to the Senate. At that point, then they become more serious. But he may be able to give us,
well,
and if we can get on his email list so that he's sending us real data, that would be perfect.
All right, why don't I call him this week and ask? Yeah. And if he thinks it's too soon, then I'll report back to the committee and we'll have him the month after. How's that?
Good.
All right. So I'd like to just give a quick summary on these three bills for people. There is a quick sentence of description, but for those who may have an interest, let's see, AB 1910. Now this is, I'm speaking on my own behalf here and on behalf of, some, I guess, groups and advocates who are concerned about density. So just want to make that clear here. This isn't.
Can you make clear what those groups are?
Yeah, I speak to people including Catalyst, Catalyst California, and United Neighbors. All right. So 1910, AB 1910 is, there's an opposition to that. We need affordable housing, that's for sure. But this bill, as it's currently written, AB 1910, seeks to allow development of irreplaceable public open space for housing. This is putting housing on golf courses, public golf courses. The substantial loss of the environment is greater than any gain made in affordable housing. That's the position that's being taken. So there's general dissatisfaction with that unless amended. On the next item.
Talk about each one.
Sure. I was going to give a summary, but we can go ahead if you have any items or questions, Brandon.
Well, I mean, if you, yeah, they're full of detail. So, why are these groups opposed to building more? Like specifically, why?
Okay, so
you said environmentally, the costs outweigh the benefits of affordable housing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a couple of reasons. So as we increase density, the position is our urban areas require more open space, not less. This is taking away public space. Certainly in the city of Los Angeles, there are over 1.7 million square feet of city-owned properties, 26 properties that are listed in Ron Galperin's 2020 inventory of available places or buildings, spaces that could accommodate this type of housing. So before we start taking away golf courses, those should be very strongly considered. When the state is so alarmed by the growing threat of climate change, how can anybody think that the loss of such huge, acreage is going to be environmentally wise? So, this is important, I think, also for the well-being of the community, and their use must remain public and recreational. So AB 1910 mandates that only 15% of the open space, which amounts to a small pathway along the perimeter, that remains open. That's according to these opinions, which includes me, is not enough. And to meet the RENA allocations, a calculation was made that 58% of all developments must be affordable. So 25% affordable housing that is dictated by this bill would hardly come close to meeting those affordable housing requirements. So these are, we have a lot of non-recreational public property currently being used for parking that would better serve these needs. If there's, such a pressing need for affordable housing, that would be far preferable than taking away open green spaces. So those are some of the main reasons stated for opposition to AB 1910 as it currently is drafted.
Let's just quickly, do we know the status of that bill? Has it passed the assembly, or is it in committee, or?
I believe it's in committee, but I will double check and have a status update for you guys next time. So this is as of a couple of weeks ago, but we know these things move fast. Brandon, do you have any
Bob, it passed the Assembly's Housing and Community Development Committee in March, at the end of March, and it passed the Assembly's Local Government Committee at the end of April. So it's making its way.
Okay.
It's going to appropriations next.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I support this bill.
Okay,
And I think that we need, do you all hear the airplane?
No, that's probably me. I put it on.
No, it's me. But anyway, Burbank. So this is just providing the option to develop in it's not going to be clear, it's not going to instantly take away, it's not going to instantly rezone publicly owned golf courses. It just provides more housing opportunities for as suitable sites. I don't agree with the climate change argument. I think golf courses are extremely water heavy, and that's not something we should be. That should not be a desired use in severe drought conditions. Increasing density provides more access to a more balanced jobs housing balance, which reduces vehicle miles traveled, which reduces greenhouse gas emissions, which reduces climate change. So that's my spiel. The 58% affordable, not every bill needs to be the silver bullet to address the housing crisis. I imagine the percentage of the affordability is to ensure that things get built. If it's 100% affordable housing funds are really hard to come by, and it's really hard to build those projects. So you need to have market rate to support the feasibility and to pencil it out. So in order to meet RENA goals, all sorts of things need to happen, but this is just yet another tool in the toolkit. So that's my spiel. So, and it's statewide. So I appreciate the mention of the city controller's inventory, but it's for the whole state. So one case example shouldn't be judged. So thank you.
more comments, Bob?
Yeah, on the surface, I tend to agree with Brandon, but I need a lot more information. This is the first I've been introduced. I should have done some homework, I guess, but I didn't. So I would reserve my comments for when I have more time to review everything. But obviously, it's coming from a desire to provide housing, which is sorely needed. This pandemic has made homeowners very rich and renters extremely poor.
Fred, can you mute Lee? Yeah, there's a dog barking.
That's all. I will do my homework. I'll do a deep dive on this test.
Would it be helpful if I sent you links to the legislation, Bob?
No, I can Google that stuff.
Okay.
It was AB 1910, I think you said.
It's all on the agenda.
Okay. And then we can get something to Azarian once we, as a committee, decide what we want to do.
Okay. Ren?
I have one quick comment. The first thing that came to my mind was Weddington Golf Course. That obviously is not even being used for golf anymore. So I'm afraid it could be a sitting duck for this. I hope not. But anyway, just.
Is that a public or a private golf course?
Private.
Private.
It would not be applicable to this bill. It's only public
Exactly.
golf courses.
Thank you, Brandon.
Sure.
Well, if I
Can I
may,
make a comment?
yeah, go ahead, Lee.
Okay, just two comments. One, with the development, they're saying we're in a water shortage, during the drought. That's going to use even more water. The more people we put here, the more water usage, the more severe the drought. Also, when you have people in an apartment in a high condensed area like New York, with the epidemic, it spreads it much quicker. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Interesting points. Thank you. I was going to comment on some of the comments. Bob, did you have more to say?
No, did I?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So Brandon, the thing I like about you is that you're researched and thoughtful, even if we disagree on these things. And we do disagree on this very much, but that's okay. And I take your comments seriously. Certainly, I haven't researched the availability, the inventory availability of other cities. I'm just using Ron Galperin's inventory of Los Angeles and the 1.7 million square feet that is available here. I do think that it's a slippery slope, even if this bill is passed and it were to be made possibly available. I would want to protect against something like that, and to have housing built in a public open space for recreation, I would want to be the very last priority. So, but I do take your comments to heart and thank you for them very much. So it looks like, Fred, it looks like we might have comments from the public. Is Fred on the controls?
Someone
Sorry,
just.
I was
unmuted.
muted. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, I was going to say it's Jonathan. Somebody just unmuted me. My comment is this: irrelevant to whether or not you are pro increasing the density or pro maintaining status quo of the density, in other words, anti-development. Regardless of that, I'm hoping that this neighborhood council, your committee, can recognize that any legislation, this new genre of legislation that's been coming through successfully to divorce local communities from any influence over its own zoning, has to be stopped. So in other words, I see no reason why you would believe it to be in the stakeholders' best interests to advocate for any legislation that bypasses this new word ministerially, local ordinances and local controls on what a community itself wants for its own land use. I recommend that you work toward immediately, not out in the years to come, issuing a CIS, a community impact statement, and any other letters of advocacy you can think of to fight any type of legislation that bypasses any the ordinary exercise of zoning that a community has traditionally had in California, which is being eliminated. That's very important, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be doing that in behalf of the stakeholders' interests. Thank you.
All right, before we move to the next piece of legislation, I will mention, Jonathan, that the next agenda item is discussion of the RENA needs assessment. RENA, numbers, the shorthand is going to discuss precisely that. Well, local control ties into that. So stay with us. And I am very much in favor of community impact statements that uphold local control. And with respect to, you used a comment, anti-development. Jonathan, I would say that I'm pro code compliant development. That's my position. So anyway, Brandon, it looks like Brandon has a comment.
Yeah, just I just think it's important just to have both sides. The local control, again, this does not immediately rezone something. It doesn't immediately convert a golf course. So because it would be publicly owned land, it would have to go through a process, a public process, likely through an exclusive negotiating agreement that identifies developers to develop the example golf course, and it would go through a public process. This is just enabling that discussion. So local control is still retained in that way.
All right. Well, Thank you, Brandon. So not immediate, but I'm not quite reassured, but we can discuss that again later as the bill progresses. So if it's all right, I'll move on to the next of the three bills, AB 205.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's another.
We have one more comment from the
Oh,
public.
sorry. Okay.
Okay, so forgive me if I mispronounced the last name, but Josephek, forgive me, you're allowed to talk?
Hi, yes, no, you got it right. I'm very impressed.
Oh,
I just want to say that the idea that allowing a public golf course to be turned into development, no matter what percentage of the housing is classified as affordable or not, that would stop the enrichment of homeowners is kind of a fantasy. And that's the problem with the literally dozens and dozens of upzoning laws that have been passed over these past 3 or so years. It's corporate developers who are the beneficiary of these laws. You can argue that a golf course takes a lot of water, and it sure does. And quite frankly, I have a problem with golf courses in general when there's a problem with not enough land for people. But there is an incredible drought, and that is something that is being absolutely, totally, completely, and utterly ignored in Sacramento. The fact that there would be housing placed on these properties is wonderful if you say that it's going to fix the affordable housing crisis, but the word affordable doesn't actually appear in any of these bills, And so again, it's a fantasy that that's what this is for. Again, this is for the developers who are tired of having to actually go through hoops, having to adhere to CEQA, the Environmental Control Quality Act. They don't like it. It puts the brakes on what they do. And the problem is that people have been sort of led to believe that these developments are going to change the affordable housing crisis, and they will do no such thing. We have a climate problem that's not being addressed, and the climate problem is exacerbated the more green space that's taken out. I would say if you're going to do something with a local public golf course, turn it into parkland and plant trees that are going to help the environmental crisis. But building luxury and market rate housing with a couple of quote unquote affordable units stuck in there, it just perpetuates the myth that this is going to fix the affordable housing crisis. Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have Lee wants to speak, and then we'll go to Brandon.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lee. Lee, you want to say something, Lee? Okay, maybe not. If you do, oh, Lee, there, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, when you build more houses, housing apartments, that encourages people to come here even more so, believe it or not. You don't want to do that. If anything on a golf course, I would like to see those mini houses like they have in North Hollywood by the May Company. That I can see. Very little water use, very little nothing. But you don't want to build an apartment or any of that crap there because it's going to invite more people. Yeah, they say we'll build a couple affordable units, but you know what? It's all out of range where poor people can't afford it. So you end up putting more people in the street and inviting more people. You don't want to do that. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Now we'll go to Brandon and then Mark.
I just, sorry. I just think it's important just to show the other side. But to correct the record, and I come here with good faith, and
It's about development.
so can you
Excuse
mute?
me, Fred, can you mute Lee when he's not speaking? Because he's got,
Thank
there.
you. Okay. So there's discussion that there was no affordable housing. The bill include it. It's in the title of the bill that it will include affordable housing. It has provisions for affordable housing. It's not just some affordable housing. It's 58% in the industry. 20% affordable is often the high point in order to pay for to make the project work. So 58, if that's what is, I'm just basing that from what Tess said, but actually when I don't know where you got that information because I'm searching 58 now, but
I have an analysis here.
okay. Anyway, so there's that. There was, and then CEQA is triggered for every discretionary action. So again, the development of a public golf course enabled by this bill would have to undergo the California Environmental Quality Act. So
Brandon, CEQA is triggered by every discretionary act, right?
except for the exemptions, but yeah, but this bill does not exempt it from CEQA review.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Looks like Mark has a comment.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, it's, I wish things weren't complicated. I think everyone would probably agree that we want everyone to have a roof over their head, that, you're right. But like I say, it's complicated and the tiny homes are complicated. I was attending a meeting that got a little contentious because tiny homes are not permanent. Those are temporary. People have to leave from those to be able to actually get housing. And of course, and I appreciate both sides of the coin. I think it's very important that we have open discussion about it and learn more, and I'm learning more. Yes, and I've heard, Brandon, like that 20% is, whenever you're going over the 20% is when you're really pushing the envelope. And as Tess and I have discussed before, we know that over at North Hollywood, over at the Metro area, they're wanting to push that well above the 20% for affordable housing. And of course, that can become burdensome, very burdensome for developers as well. I know at the discussion that I was at that involved the NoHo Home Alliance.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, NoHo Home Alliance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were talking about there is a push for these hotel motels for more of those rooms being used as actually affordable housing to be a replacement. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of this goes. But the one thing that I had brought up, which wasn't very popular, was I started talking about my tax dollars. And of course, that wasn't very popular, but I was like, guys, we've been taking all of our tax dollars. What are you doing with it?
Good point, Mark. Good.
So I had a very nice discussion with someone who was also very, and she's a marvelous person. And we were just talking it out. And I think there's where we have to get to the bottom line. And I think that's another reason why what Bryn has brought up, and Tess, you have as well, about the mayoral dialogues, the conversations. Those are extremely important, that we clearly hear the views of the candidates and that we actually get all the information. I attended one of the conversations for mayoral candidates that became disruptive, and they had to close it because of activists. But it is important that we educate ourselves, because the next mayor and those who are elected in city council, we need to also be keeping our eyes wide open for them and the actions that they take, because we have very important things that need to be accomplished here in the city. So that's my 2 cents at this point. But Brandon and Tess, I appreciate again all of the information. It's informative for all of us.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more comments? Okay.
All right, so
Okay.
quick overview of AB 2053. That's the next item on the agenda under 6.4. So this is Assembly Member Buffy Wicks, and the status of this bill is that it has, let's see, it's passed the Assembly Housing and Community Development. And I think it's been referred to the Committee on Appropriations. So that's the current status of AB 2053. Check me if I'm wrong, Brandon. And
Correct.
is that correct? Good.
Yes.
Okay. So again, I'm part of people who want code compliant development. All right. And there is general opposition among groups and people that I know and the people that I represent, because for those who may not know, I'm also the president of a residents association, in addition to being on this committee and part of the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. And there's opposition to this AB 2053 unless amended and clarified. So as a concept, this bill is a continuation of the state's policy to not subsidize affordable housing. And therein is a big problem, because this was being done up until Governor Jerry Brown took it away. And as much as developers are often decried for doing what they do, I completely sympathize that they need to make a profit. So it's difficult to make to create affordable housing or build affordable housing, period. So some sort of subsidy is needed in order for that to occur. And we don't have any as part of the state policy any longer the way we used to up until and prior to Governor Jerry Brown. So this bill currently is based on current developer model of overbuilding at market rate housing to subsidize a subset of affordable housing. And it does not avoid the inherent issue of overbuilding market rate housing in expensive areas that simply adds to the affordability problem. So some concerns on this bill, if you'd like some detail, is that the financial structure of this proposal is extremely opaque and vague. It discusses self-supporting projects, but contemplates debt financing for startup and administrative costs without limits. That's a big problem. There are a number, I'll just give a few highlights. The understanding is that eminent domain will not be considered, and therefore it must be specifically prohibited in this bill. That's a big concern. Community input must be part of the process of this bill for it to be fair to communities. This cannot be an agency that ignores a community planning and input. So, and just one last item here, this government agency that would oversee this process is proposed to be a board appointed by the governor. And the feeling is that boards should be much more apolitical in nature than this, as they would be if appointed by one individual, particularly the governor, whoever that governor may be. So this agency and its actions would affect many communities, and it seems only equitable that it should be nonpartisan in makeup. So those are just some of the items of concern. Currently opposed unless amended and clarified. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Brandon.
I have a couple questions. So first of all, I guess on my take on the bill is that it's an interesting idea, and I know I hear that it has a long way to go, but that it's an interesting idea. But my questions were, you said that Governor Brown took away something. Are you talking about the redevelopment agency?
Yes.
Okay. And then the specific reasons why folks are opposed to this are that it's not 100% affordable, or that it has market rate at all, or?
No, neither of those. It's that in order to achieve the subset of affordable housing, too much market rate housing would have to be built as currently proposed. So there's an overbuilding of market rate in order to achieve and subsidize a subset of affordable housing.
Oh, okay. All right.
So in other
I don't
words,
really have a comment about that.
if we can,
I understand what you're saying, but
okay.
it's, I imagine, I don't know. I mean, I would think redevelopment, I started my career before or after redevelopment agent ended. So, but I would imagine that the redevelopment agency had to comply with zoning laws. They can't just trump, just because they're a state agency, they can't just ignore what's already designated and such. So yeah, but I see that this is, it's a complicated bill. Yeah.
Well, that's a fair point, Brandon, and
I do-
it's all subject to discussion, and that's a
Yeah,
fair.
yeah, yeah. But I do appreciate you said that the eminent domain provisions, the prohibition of that is.
It must be specifically prohibited in the bill.
I wonder, the only thing is it eminent domain for existing housing? Like, right? Like, I mean, eminent, like, I would hope that the state could use eminent domain for, just to be clear to, like, it's not, like, eminent domain is when you take something, when the government takes something from private property and you have to have just compensation.
And,
Right.
and for the
So-
good of the public, yeah.
Right. So, like, I'm just, hopefully folks are not advocating just for, or maybe advocating for opposition for just housing, existing housing on the ground so people aren't displaced.
I would have to review that and get back to you.
But like my understanding is that what made the redevelopment agency successful was that it was able to use eminent domain to maybe purchase a dead shopping center. And then it would be able to take that land, and then redevelop it and flip it. And because there's successor agencies which just divvy out funds, is my understanding, but there's no mechanism for that. But again, it's a complicated bill. I don't really have much else to say about it because the structure, you have to recreate the redevelopment agency. So,
Well, all of those are good points, and I will check it out and get back to you, Brandon. So thank you for your thoughtfulness as always.
Brandon, we had, this is Lee, we had a redevelopment agency, CRA, here for years, and it was the worst thing you could ever get. Not only did they overdevelop, if you lived in the development agency, you had to use their contractor to do your roofs. It was bad, and you can't get rid of them. They vote themselves in another 12 years. They vote themselves. You don't want CRA back. We just got rid of them. Thank you.
If I can jump in for a second, yeah, the redevelopment agency came and went. We still have a housing authority, Los Angeles City Housing Authority. As I understand, they've got 40 to 50,000 units of housing across the city, public housing. Some of it goes back to pre-World War II, although they've been fairly active in tearing down the old projects and building new, better projects with more amenities and making them more livable. They haven't added much in the way of units for a long time. Some people may remember that where Dodger Stadium is, at one point was designated as a place for a big public housing project. And in the early, when the Dodgers came in, they were happy to turn that land over for Dodger Stadium instead. So anyway, fully public housing, if you will, is, has a long history, but hasn't been supported here in LA County even for quite a long time, with some exceptions. I mean, they do get projects in here and there, but they've fallen, of course, way behind the demand for low-income housing, and that's part of the reason we have this crisis. Anyway, little history.
Thank you, Ren. Do we have a public? We have a public comment.
We do. We have Lee again.
Yes. I just want to say real quick, on Harmony Street, North Hollywood, that was duplex, fourplex houses. Redevelopment took it over, and it's high density. You cannot find a parking spot if you're visiting somebody. It's the worst mess you can ever imagine. You can barely get through the street. Please stop development. Please, single-family dwelling duplex, one story. That's the only way to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lee. And now we have Miss Josephek. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the conversation about trusting the state agency that they're going to do the right thing. The problem with so many of these upzoning bills is that they are so, I have to say, purposefully vague, as to be purposefully badly and incoherently written. I can't help but refer back to SB 9, where we were assured on numerous occasions that no high fire zones would be allowed to be part of SB 9. And when that bill came out and was signed into law, we turned it upside down and inside out. Gee, I still can't find where those no high fire zones are. We'll change it later. We're going to fix it later. We hear that over and over and over again, and it just doesn't happen. And it's a game that we believe is being played. And people are sort of told that this is it'll get fixed. We'll fix it, and it doesn't get fixed. And the legislators keep falling for it and keep saying, "Well, I'll support it, but you're going to change it." It was like the 4 means 4 concept for SB 9, and we know that 4 doesn't mean 4. 4 actually kind of means maybe 6, maybe more. 4 doesn't mean 4. And we keep getting this with these bills that are badly crafted. And, if it's a couple of times, I'd say it's a mistake that's, not on purpose, but it's hard to believe it at this point. It's just really hard to believe it. And so whatever aspect of trusting the state agency to do the right thing, I got to say that's a really scary concept at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Brandon, go ahead.
Did I hear SB 50 or did I hear SB 9? Can you clarify, Ms. Josepha?
I'm sorry.
Did you say SB 50 or SB 9?
SB 9.
Oh,
SB 9.
Okay. Okay, but without getting into the details too much about SB 9, but SB 9, I believe, it cannot be implemented in high fire hazard zones. But my knowledge of how bills are written and stuff, it is hard for you look at this and it is difficult to understand, but when it says create, let's see, it would create a housing authority, all these and we don't know every single detail. It's my belief that we don't need to have, or we should not have, every detail codified into law, and then you're restricted for that. We need to have we have a whole executive branch in California that could provide more guidance and work out the implementation, but within the limits of what the bill says.
And I guess I'd love to trust that the guidance is going to be doing the right guidance.
No, I mean
but-
that yeah, I don't have anything to say about that, but that's just my thoughts about lawmaking. But yeah.
I share your hope.
So do I. All right.
Right. Anybody else? I think Lee, do you want to talk? Go ahead, Lee. Lee, you have to unmute.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that we have to stop the development, reasonable development, like I said, mini houses like they have by the Bay Company on golf course, on church parking is great. We got to stop this. There will be another New York if we don't, and it does spread disease with people living next door to each other and creates drug dealing and criminals and invites people from out of town to come here. And the poor people are still going to be homeless on the street because they build a high density. You have 2 units that are cheap for poor people. The rest are high density. The developer is the only winner, and the city council and the mayor. They're all crooks. We're not. We're victims. Thank you.
Looks like Mark has a question.
It's not so much as a question as a comment, and actually, well, it's not going to be dealing with state legislation. So if I can speak, I'll be glad to do this. So one, Lee, please don't evoke New York. That only gets Robert bent out of shape, and appropriately, he should be bent out of shape.
Thank you, Mark.
Right? Again, we're Los Angeles. Let's just focus on Los
My
Angeles.
apologies to Robert. My apologies. It didn't mean specifically New York. Let me
Acceptably.
re-clarify. The
Right.
big city life, life.
Right.
Chicago, Cincinnati, the big
Don't
city where
mention
people.
cities. Again,
Just say
Lee,
downtown
don't-
LA, okay?
Yeah, don't just focus on LA. Please. Lee.
Okay,
All right.
downtown LA.
Good. Focus
sorry.
on LA.
Thanks for the.
So here's a comment that I'm going to bring up that I brought up. I guarantee I brought this up at least 3 years ago. So there was a development, housing development that was built, apartments on Moore Park, west of Vineland. And it's right by the car wash. You know, the station that's being renovated and that new car wash. Remember the car wash that's about to go in? Yes. So Ren may remember this, and I brought this up, Robert, you may as well. I brought up concern because I said, you know, with that new development, are they going to be turning left as you drive west on Moore Park? Are they going to be turning left into this development? Oh, no, that's, and you know, they all said, no, that's not happening. And it's only going to be such and such. I am here to tell you on repeated violations, by the way, because it is a double line. It is a double line not to be crossed. Traffic gets backed up on Moore Park due to cars wanting to turn left into that complex. It's a very large complex. The reason why I'm also bringing this up is, again, you know, it's one of those things where we have to really hold the developers' feet to the fire as much as we can, is that I also explicitly brought up a concern about that car wash. Because again, my concern is about how people are getting in and out of that car wash. Because if you got people turning left on a double line on Moore Park into that, because that development is right by that car wash.
Mhm.
And so I just want to bring that up again to our committee, this team, you know, with the wisdom that we have, is that we always have to be looking at all of the angles to have a clear understanding of what is versus what should be. So there we go. That's what I wanted to say.
What development is that, Mark? Is that Moore Park and Vineland?
Yeah, it's it's on the south side of Moore Park on the west side of Vineland. It's right near that, the station that's been renovated,
Yes.
right? It's on the other, it's
So
next-
it's not quite at the intersection. It's slightly west of Vineland, south side.
yes.
we should dig out our notes and go, hold that guy's feet to the fire. But this predates my participation on the committee, but
Right. This is before the pandemic.
yeah, well, that's outrageous. That's outrageous. If he made promises that he doesn't keep, which by the way, is one reason that people don't trust developers, because they'll say anything to get their projects approved. And then look at us 3 years later. I'm glad you pointed that out, Mark. I was not aware of that problem, but thank you. Looks like we have more comments.
Okay, we'll do one last comment from Jonathan and then Mrs. Josephek.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you. Before you leave the subject matter, I was wondering if we could direct to Brandon for a second. My ambition is not to understand something personally, but rather to provoke this board to develop a policy for how to manage development rather than be on the extreme yes or no. What eludes me in Los Angeles is how you can consume R1 or open space golf course before the government has even addressed the density in the cross town arteries. So for example, in this case, if we looked at Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood, which everyone is familiar with, how it's developing, how there's mixed use, the ground floor is like they're trying to do at the Gelsons, the businesses, and then upstairs you get units. At the same time, you also see, what's it called? The restaurant that's a drive-through, Raising Cane, approved. Okay, it's an 1,800 square foot, in other words, smaller than probably your own house's square foot restaurant on a half an acre lot. I mean, a very large lot. So clearly, you don't have the government participating in density planning along the heavily traveled corridors of Los Angeles, but turning to open spaces and places like a golf course or R1, like our single family homes, turning them into condominium complexes or homeless shelters or whatever you want to call it. Brandon, what I would like to understand is how do you get around that? How do you ingest the idea of going after open spaces or R1 for future housing needs when our areas like Lankershim or our arteries, our dense streets, already dense, are not already utilized even in an averagely sensible way. Can you explain that to me? That would be Brandon.
Yeah.
Tell me if you don't understand my question and I'll try to be clear.
Thank you. Projects that get built need to go through their appropriate processes. There's plan check and design review.
But I mean, I'm aiming at land use. In other words, as a community, we want to aim towards sensible use of land. And when we see
that's a preference thing. Raising Canes and housing projects on Lankershim. Well, I don't know whether or not if they meet the existing zoning, they can apply for a variance, a zone change, a general plan amendment, what have you. But like that.
Well, Brandon, can I be direct then? Like in the bill you were talking about, it uses an open space called a golf course. Why would a community want to do that to itself when there's like lots being underutilized? Maybe that's the correct word.
Right. Which Tess brought up, the inventory that our city controller prepared. It's just another tool in the toolbox. I hear your concerns, but I think I disagree. I think there's a lot of limits to housing being developed that have led to our crisis. And it's not only an affordable housing crisis, but it's a supply issue. So across all income levels. So I really think your vision for what you want to be in your community, what you want to advocate for, should be written down and provided to the planner that is running our community plan update.
Right. Brandon, that's not quite what I meant. What I really meant in behalf
Okay.
of the board, to try to understand what it is that causes you to want to support using a golf course, is why would it, I don't have an idea what I want. I don't have an opinion on the matter, but I don't understand why anyone would consume open, like anything that's open in a city, because that's such a valuable asset. Anywhere you go, open space. Why would you be favorable to any bill that consumes that before all other land, all other lots are fully utilized? I don't understand your strategy. Yeah, can you help me understand it? Because again, it's not about me. I do not have an idea. I don't have a position.
For sure. Again, my answer is it's just another tool in the toolbox, and I just have a different opinion. I don't know why you're so focused on me, where I'm not on the agenda. It's just, I just have a different.
Never mind. My goal was to understand how to justify supporting a bill to use an open space for future housing.
It's not a justification. It's not bills are not about a line. We have democratically elected representatives that submit bills and different ideas of how to address the housing crisis. Whether or not this is within the priority list, I think is up to the legislature to decide and vote down or yes or no on something. I think you're talking to a bigger issue. I mean, there's issues of underutilized lots.
If I may, Brandon, I'd like to cut in here and do a point of order. I think we've gotten way off of topic here. And bluntly, Jonathan, you're supposed to have 3 minutes to make comments, and you've taken more time than I think any of the committee members. So if I may, I'd like to move the agenda along. And Jonathan, you and Brandon can talk offline, if you will. The questions you raised are huge and way beyond our 2 hours or 3 hours of planning committee meeting to resolve. So I'd like to move on.
Okay, thank you very much, Ren. Mrs. Josephek, if you have a very quick comment, if you want to say, go ahead and say it. And then
very, very quick in support of what was just said, but more to the point, as a born and bred New Yorker until about 15 years ago, I feel obligated without, with all due respect and not looking to rile anyone up, but if density was to lead to affordable housing, New York and San Francisco would not be the most expensive cities in this country. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on.
I'd like to just add a couple of things. Brandon put together a very nice community guidelines. So that is a good thing. And that, I think, addresses one of Jonathan's points. I would also say that there's been discussion sometimes of the missing middle. And I believe that may be one of Brandon's concerns in his defense, even though he and I do not agree on things. I think it's a fair comment. And as far as why more building doesn't occur along arteries, commercial arteries, Jonathan, there's a very, very good reason. When that happens, developers have to pay for infrastructure upgrades. That is not required of them when they build in residential and R1 zones. That is why there's a strong preference for R1 building in R1 zones as opposed to along commercial corridors. So there's your reason. Anyway, I'm ready to move on if everybody would like to the last legislative item. So that would be AB 2097. So AB 2097 is about residential and commercial development. It's passed the Assembly Housing and Community Development Committee and has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations as of now, as of April 27th, 2022. So this is related to land use and parking requirements. And again, there is concern on the part of people that I am in communication with. And, you know, from my research and looking at these housing density or these housing related bills, this particular bill, AB 2097, does not appear to recognize the fundamental needs of residents in their current and future and urban environments. This bill forces people to park far away from home or work, which is a safety issue, and unduly places people at risk who return home or leave work during the evening hours. I know there's a big push to get people to not drive as much, but that is, you know, hard to accomplish when people have jobs that are far from home. You can't expect the average person to sit on a bus for 4 hours a day, which is what, you know, this would call for. So this bill, it is believed, is a huge concession to developers. There's a strong objection to this. And before removing parking criteria, the state should consider funding public parking structures and free shuttle service if they wish to eliminate parking. Making life more difficult for people is not the way to solve a problem. And there are better ways to produce affordable housing than this. That is AB 2097. Strongly oppose unless amended. So any thoughts, questions, or comments?
Ren has his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah. I go back to when Gail Goldberg was city planner for the city of LA, and she quite openly, publicly said that it was her strategy and policy to amend the zoning requirements in terms of parking to allow, you know, more units, less parking. And so again, what they're talking about here at the state level is, you know, began in the city of LA quite a while ago. The reduction in the parking requirements, of course, these people are parking on the street. At that time, she was talking about public transit and, you know, the big plan for all of the transit to be built out in a relatively short period of time. And here we are, you know, 30 years later, with a lot of those projects, you know, still on the drawing boards. So we've got, you know, we got the reduced parking, but not the increase in public transit that we were hoping for and that she expected. So I think, as I say, the city of LA is a living example of what the state is going after.
Good historical notes. Thank you, Ren. Looks like Brandon has a comment.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Ending parking minimums does not end parking. Parking minimums, parking is very expensive to build housing. And because parking minimums are set by in the municipal code, and they're not necessarily match the market need. So developers can certainly build a project that, you know, it is similar to what the existing minimums are right now. Ending the minimums is in particularly what, a half a mile from, is it I'm searching a high,
See, half a mile.
within a high quality transit corridor. That's defined in the public resource code as, I believe it's 15-minute headways. So it's not sitting in the bus for 3 hours. It's a frequent bus. It's along corridors that have public, you know, whether it's the red or B line near us or the or actual buses. It has to come at a frequent case. So if you build more housing along established high quality transit corridors or areas, corridors, corridors, people would then be able to use that as an option. And then the parking would not be needed. As much parking may not be needed. Of course, this would all match whatever their market analysis would be. And then less parking equals less, frankly, less price tag for the rents. And it could reduce the overall cost of the project and the overall cost of what is being offered.
Well, assuming that savings would be passed on to the renters or the buyers. So that's
that is this is studied by Donald Shoup. He's a professor at UCLA. He wrote a whole book about it's called The High Cost of Free Parking, and he has all sorts of like discussions about parking. Of course, we're not talking about free parking in this. It's just the title, but nonetheless, it's.
Can you repeat that? Donald Shoup, The High Cost of Free Parking?
Yeah, that's his flagship book.
I'll read it. Okay, thank you.
It's a brick, but okay, good luck. Yeah.
I thought that was only in the game Monopoly. But
Okay.
okay, we got Lee Jameson here. And Lee, go ahead. It's your turn to speak, Lee.
Yes, this is Lee. I have this constituent here, Joanne. She'd like to make a comment. My computer was down, so she's been helping me get this, but she's here and she's listening. Hold on.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment about the parking. When I live in apartments, and you're paying all that money for an apartment. You need people want parking spaces. I know I get 2 parking spaces for my 1 2-bedroom apartment. And I don't want to be pushed into where you have to use public transit. I have my 20-year-old daughter, works and, late at night. I don't want her to be forced to, plus the transit systems aren't even up to speed to sustain that kind of living. The buses are infrequent at times, irregular. Some lines stop at 8:00 at night. Some, it takes there once an hour. We're far from, like in New York, it's a 24-hour system. It's different. Here, it's not. We have a very, very, it's not nowhere up to speed to be even talking about reduced parking for people in apartments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark, go ahead.
Yes, I do appreciate what she just shared. I think we've also discussed this, but I hate to say this, and again, we can make our voices heard, we can say no, we can, right? But our hands are somewhat tied because we're not the ones in power at the top of the city hierarchy, in which they are doing a lot of the planning, and we have to just, my tongue is bleeding at times. Because, for an example, there's a project that's going to be happening off of Riverside, between Riverside and Moore Park near Cahuenga. And I brought this up before, and they are developing this, and it's not going to have near enough parking, right? But it's because, well, it's close enough to the bus, or it's close enough for transportation. And our hands are starting to become tied because of this. But I do understand the frustration. But yes, they're wanting more public transportation, less vehicles on the street. And that is something that we are having to face and what to do about it.
Okay. Lee, you wanted to say something else?
Yes,
Or
I
did you
do.
wind up last time?
If they want to destroy the area, at least have them have more transit. I mean, the whole idea stinks, but if you're going to destroy the area where people can't get in their car and get around and everything, at least make the transit better. I'm against the whole thing, but that's my comment. If you're going to wreck the area, get the transit. Thank you.
Really quickly, I just want to add on that note. I take public transit quite a bit, and it's actually pretty good in this city, more so in the other side of the hill where you have buses on every major street that run very frequently. Not so much in the valley, but you still have Ventura Boulevard and Lankershim and Van Nuys and the good buses. And even on Cahuenga, they run once an hour. Then you have the subway and the Orange Line, and it's not so bad. It's really not so bad. Could be improved, but it's not so bad. That's just all I wanted to add. Okay. Now, Mrs. Josephek, you've already spoke, but you didn't really take all your 3 minutes. I'm gonna let you speak one more time if it's quick, and go ahead.
Just to comment on the notion of high quality transit, a bus stop is not a permanent thing. It can be removed. The schedule can be reduced. To the woman whose daughter works late, that is no help to her to be near what is a quote unquote high quality transit stop. For people who have disabilities or work at late hours, that is very little comfort. As someone said, New York is a 24/7 transportation system, and there's almost no place you can't get to in New York. I was shocked when I moved to LA because I just was shocked, because for a city like this, it was just incredible to me that the transportation was just so low quality. And so I have to laugh when I hear about high quality transit. The notion that developers say that people don't drive or won't be driving, well, that may be true in 10 or 15 or 30 years, but it's not true now. And the idea is that if you want to create buildings and housing that has the ability to be converted later on when people stop driving, knock yourself out. That's a brilliant, brilliant way to do it. But it's not speaking to the reality of today. The transportation is lousy. The public transportation is lousy. And for people that rely on cars, the idea of saying to them, you have to spend 3 hours for what would take you 45 minutes now because we think cars shouldn't be allowed is just not reality. Again, it's fantasy. And it's not an efficient and smart and fair way of running a government. I'll stop now. Thank you for the extra time.
Okay, thank you very much. And last, Jonathan, go ahead again. I'm sorry, not Jonathan. Who am I? Lee, you go ahead and speak again. One more time and then Tess. Go ahead, Lee, unmute yourself.
Hi, it's actually me again on the spot. To the person who said that we have to just kowtow to what the upper echelons of government are doing is not true. They can be voted out. They could be fired. We have to not forget that we have the bigger voice. There's more of us than them. And so I don't believe in that we just have to, my tongue is burning and we have no power. That's not true. We can all speak our voice. Things do get overturned or changed. And the woman that just spoke, I don't know her name, but everything she said was spot on. And I just want to, say I agree with everything she has said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. And here we go, Tess.
So maybe to wrap up this item, Fred, I will say that regarding the matching of need, Brandon, which is very, very important, I would want to make sure that need matching is done not just by developers and the people they pay to draft reports, that's really something that's brought to the community, because a projected need matching is very likely going to underestimate the amount of parking needed. That's number one. And number two, Mark, I appreciate your comments very much, and I do appreciate you. And there's some things I'd love to talk to you about offline. I do respectfully disagree that while, yes, it may be true on many levels, our hands are tied, we're here to try to give voice to stakeholders and carry that forward to legislators. And I think our voices do make a difference, even if it's not immediately clear.
Oh, yeah. And I totally agree. Tess, I totally agree. I totally agree. My frustration is the hierarchy in which they're setting the statements. And that's where we have to push back.
It's what we're doing, Mark. It's what we're doing. All right, good. Okay, so shall we jump to the next item, or would you prefer a 45-hour meeting? Well, I I'm happy to see people engaged in discussing things, so that's very good. And let's see. All right, moving on to the next item. which I will, I asked for this to be agendized. 6.5, discussion regarding regional housing needs assessment, otherwise known as RENA, and its effect on Los Angeles and on the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. A review of the California State Auditor's report on RENA. There's a small typo in the agenda. Now, when I submitted this agenda item, there was a link. I printed a copy, so I don't know if that hyperlink was present in the agenda item online. I hope it was, but in any case, so for those who may not understand RENA, the RENA housing needs allocation was something that was maybe, you know what, Brandon, I can explain this, but you can probably explain it better. Would you care to explain exactly what RENA is? This is your area of specialization. Certainly I can too, but you're better at this.
Oh, okay. The regional housing needs allocation is something that gets assessed every 8 years to determine the number of housing units to meet a myriad of factors. And it's broken down by income level, above, shoot, what are the RENA numbers?
Well, it's essentially
very low, moderate, and above moderate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's based on a regional scale, so it's divvied out by the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG. But the state's Department of Housing and Community Development establishes the regional housing needs determination, and then SCAG allocates the money to jurisdictions that zone. So like counties, cities. Each jurisdiction, like the city of Los Angeles, is given a portion of that regional housing need, and then they themselves have to meet various goals across those 4 income levels based on the area median income. And that's what facilitates the housing element update. So
that's a very good summary, Brandon. So in short, we're handed a number, and I believe for Los Angeles County, that number is 450,000 units to build by, what is it, 2029, Brandon? So we're given we're given a number of housing units to build by a certain date, and unfortunately, failure to do so carries penalties. And there's been a lot of discussion about those numbers and what and their basis. Ren, I see a question. Would you like to further clarify, Rena, before I continue? You're muted.
The numbers come down from SCAG, and they come to the county, and then the city gets a goal, and my understanding it's 300,000 roughly, and additional units, and then the city planning department allocates that out to the various planning areas. And because our community plan is in the works, our allocation, our share of those units may show up, before we have a chance to really understand what the numbers are and what's happening. And the thing I'm afraid of is that because the city is under pressure to, meet these goals, that it'll allocate more than our share, if you will, because we happen to be in the process of a community plan update. Other areas have just finished their community plan update, may have much lower numbers for housing, but the city can't go back quickly and update their numbers, so they're going to allocate those to those they have in hand, which include us. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so anxious for all of us to be watching for this community plan. We need to make sure they're not giving us an extra 1,000 or 2,000 units of housing in Toluca Lake just because, they don't know where else to put them.
Yeah, well, Ren, I precisely share your concern. And so we do need to know about that. Otherwise, we'll send all the extras over to you. How about that? To live with you. Ren would love that. So, okay. Brandon, Brandon, did you have further clarification before I continue? I just want to explain what's going on and what's being.
Yeah, just a correction that or maybe just, clarification. The housing element, it's not divvied out by planning area or like areas of the city, is my understanding, but there is a website on the city planning website that has an interactive map that shows targeted rezoning or just different like programs in order to meet the housing needs. So it's called an adequate sites inventory. And so I'm just saying like that's already been approved.
Adequate sites inventory?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't quite follow that. What exactly has been approved? Adequate sites inventory.
The housing element update has been approved by the city.
Can you send me that link, Brandon? That's the first I've heard of that. I'd like to have a look. Would you please?
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So to continue, and the reason why I asked for this to be agendized is I think that people need to know that the California State Auditor, Michael Tilden, submitted a report in March or a letter to the governor. He conducted a report that there was insufficient oversight and lack of support for the considerations of the Department of Housing and Community Development when it came up with these RHNA numbers. All right. Translation, too many housing units being assigned to our area, indeed to many, if not all areas of California. So this matters because the RHNA numbers are used by the state to force housing upon local municipalities. It's not optional. How, it means our neighborhoods can easily grow hugely in size. So one organization, the California Alliance of Local Electeds, also known as CALI, which is a statewide organization of local elected officials, called for a review, and many organizations are supporting the state auditor's findings. So some of the problems which have been pointed out include that, let me see here, there's actually a bit of a list, that the problems include inconsistent vacancy rates, improper benchmarking and comparisons. For example, I believe the McKinsey report used New York as a benchmark against California, which completely is not a correct comparison or benchmark. There were omissions, overcount, inconsistencies in housing unit projections, a lack of documentology that was used to support the findings. So these are problems, again, pointed out by the California State Auditor, Michael S. Tilden. His report came out in March 2022, and a number of people and organizations are pushing for this. So for this report, for this audit to take place. And what specifically we would like to see, and I'm speaking for myself and the people who approve of an audit going forward and would like to see the RHNA numbers reevaluated. The outcomes that these groups would like to see would be to require HCD, that's Housing and Community Development, to implement the state audit recommendations in a transparent public process, because right now the public is not very trusting of these numbers, to prohibit HCD from moving forward with the 6th cycle RHNA. That would mean with the housing element in Southern California, because we're further ahead in the cycle than Northern California, until the shortcomings identified in the audit are resolved and reliable. So The governor, attorney general, and the legislature should declare an immediate stop to literally bullying cities and groups who object to implementing these RENA quotas based on what are considered to be unreliable HCD practices and numbers, and have state assembly members and state senators veto the 2022 housing bills that are now based on RENA until HCD can produce reliable and verifiable numbers. So those are some of the goals of those who object strenuously to the RENA numbers as they currently stand. They are not reliable numbers. So I'm happy to go on and give more detail, but there may be questions and probably comments. Ren and Brandon.
Are you able and willing to put together a letter for the GTLNC to go to the appropriate, our legislators, I guess? I don't know who all maybe.
Absolutely, yes. And there are legislators who are supporting this. Yes, I would be happy to do that.
Okay, the next question is, do we have time for our next, our next meeting and GTLNC meeting, or do we need to do it this week in order to get it to GTLNC?
I think the sooner the better.
Can you do it that quickly?
Yeah, I might be able to get something together for the board meeting next Tuesday. Certainly by next month. Let me see what I'm unaware of deadlines specifically, but the sooner this happens, the better.
Yeah, we need it by Friday for the meeting. It has to go out, of course, part of the agenda, it has to go out to the other members of the board, so.
Okay, so.
Short fuse, but if you could do it and get it out to all the members of our committee, at least maybe we can get some quick input, one day turnaround.
There's no Brown Act violation. I can send it to everybody and I'll think this through, but as long as there aren't any Brown Act violations, sure, I can get something together.
Okay, I think we need a motion, so I will move that we request that you put together a draft letter for the GTLNC to review at its meeting on what are we talking about on the date? But anyway, whatever that day is.
May 17th, 2022. Yeah. Okay. All right.
We'll share it with the committee, and if we have general support for it, that's fine. If there seems to be serious opposition, why we can talk about it. We may have to delay it till the next meeting so we can talk about it within committee.
Okay.
I'd like to at least have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
I don't think this is actually in order. This is not on the agenda, a motion. We were just prepared to discuss these ideas. There was no motion on the agenda. And it would be a Brown Act violation it literally sounds like a backroom deal to have this, but.
Okay, well,
well, hold on a second. Hold on. Brandon, certainly nothing is going to happen if it's a Brown Act violation.
Well, so and more to the point, in what I was just going to say in general about this is that there's no rush, because the sixth cycle, the ship has already sailed, things have already been put in place. As far as the number goes, how it gets implemented and the penalties and stuff, that still needs to be worked out. But as far as the audit, the audit was prepared, Tess. That's what you were saying, that you want an audit, but what you just read is the summary of the recommendations from the auditor's report. And
I don't think it's technically an audit, it was a report, but we may be just,
it's an auditor's report. It's not No, I think this is the end all. There's a full website and chapters and appendices to it. They did an audit, and it wasn't the letter by the acting California state auditor was very vague about it, about in particular about the irregularities of it. He did not specify that the vacancy numbers were under or over. So I just want to make that clear. But from what I've heard is that RENA will be looked at by HCD as required by this audit. It was like every 6 months or something. I saw it. It's in the letter. But periodically they need to look at some data sets per these recommendations, and then I said
if I can break
the next cycle. Sorry, Ren. The next cycle would be amended. Most likely would be amended. How it's, but we just talked about the housing element. The housing element has been adopted. The ship has already sailed about the regional housing needs determination. So I just want to this is, we're not in a rush for any discussion about
Thank
this.
you for that, Brandon. And that may be, but I'll talk to you about that further.
And why we're not in a rush. And then I would like to have more discussion about this at our next meeting, if you want to have a motion on the agenda, but it should go through this meeting.
Given Brandon's objection, Tess, and if you, why don't we withdraw the motion for tonight and draft this up in a more thoughtful way and with doing some research, because we definitely want whatever we do to hit the right place and not just be a reaction to something
at the right time. Yeah. And taking all that on faith, Brandon, I mean, I would never, the ship has sailed is relative, and we could always bring the ship back or maybe halt it a little bit. But taking all of that on faith, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to wait until next month if there's no great rush. So, but the sooner this gets looked at and at least paused, the better. So,
yeah, what I mean by the ship has sailed is that I believe that the numbers are set in stone. Whether these numbers are met within 8 years, even I have question marks about that.
Well, but the problem with these numbers not being met is how the cities who fail to meet the numbers are punished, and there's louder and louder and stronger.
But that has nothing to do with. Okay, just I don't.
Yeah, let's table this and bring it back next month, and we'll be able to target our letter in the right way to make it have some impact.
Very wise, Ren. It looks like we may have a comment from Lee, and yes, and Miss Josephek.
Are we still doing more public comment, or is public comment over?
Okay.
Why there shouldn't be
You read?
Agenda item.
So this
You
is
read me?
public comment. Okay, go ahead, Lee.
Roger. As you know how I feel about development, is there any solution? I'm frustrated a little bit. Is there anybody who's going to listen to us? We're the little people, and the politicians don't care because they get bribed and the council gets bribed. What can we do to get their attention in addition to a recall? Because it takes a lot of people to do the signatures to recall. I don't frankly see that happening soon. What can we do to get their attention legally?
I think we do what we're doing, and we work with groups who feel as we do, and we try to find areas of agreement, even with those groups that we don't agree with. Lee. I think that's the way to go. So we try to understand the opposition and find commonality and try to achieve consensus so that as our society grows, that we're trying to work as much as possible in the same or similar direction. So.
All right, because last meeting, some man commented, he was dead on. Why do you keep reelecting the same officials who keep screwing you over? He didn't word it that way, but why do you keep putting in the bad politicians over and over? We can change that if we get the people in that are right. That's, I guess, all my comment is. Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. Are we still doing public comment or no?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay. All right, Mrs. Josephek, go ahead, please.
I think the whole point is to, in response to what do we do? The point is that this audit has been released. There were clearly questions raised about what the methodology was, the transparency. My understanding is that there is no transparency of how these numbers were reached. There were things that were debunked about some of the numbers, like all the millions of units that were needed. Having McKinsey hired to do that has been questionable at best. The number of people leaving the state is another issue that has not been addressed. The Embarcadero Institute has debunked much of what is being touted as true. Even Governor Newsom has backed off on some of the original claims. And I think the bottom line is to say, oh, and quite frankly, there are a couple of situations where the numbers indicated that certain communities would have gotten higher numbers. So if some would have gotten higher, then others would have gotten lower. And my understanding is also that in past years, if a city actually questioned their numbers, they were threatened with having their numbers raised. So
Really?
the lack of transparency and process for this has been questionable at best and is finally being recognized in this audit. And I believe that the way we deal with it is to reach out to our elected officials, the ones we seem to keep reelecting, and bring to their attention this audit and say, we want you to hold the feet to the fire and say, this audit shows how badly this is handled, and we want you to do something about it and pay attention to the recommendations. And it shouldn't just be, oh, okay, well, we'll look at that the next time. There were huge problems that were revealed in this, and we need to contact our elected officials and say, you must pay attention to this audit and do something about it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And Lee Jamison, go ahead. Go ahead, Lee. Maybe Lee's hand up was from last time. Here you go. Lee, is that, you want to talk?
No, I didn't really have any comment on this one. I already made my comment.
Oh, okay, your hand was up. Okay. All right, Jonathan.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Go ahead, Jonathan.
When you board members are busy doing your preparation for the meetings, you're probably going online researching issues, subject matter. And whenever you do that, just like I've done that, you learn right away what's going on in other neighborhood councils and in other districts all around Los Angeles. So when you're not issuing community impact statements, CISs, when you're not doing that, you're not communicating to anyone what your predispositions are for any particular policies in general, even if you've, so to speak, missed the boat on a particular issue. If you're sending these CISs out that identify Greater Toluca Lake as having desires, having various predispositions regarding legislation, then you create for us as a community a reputation that other neighborhood councils actually can either emulate or fight, depending on how they feel. But if you're not doing it, you're not going on record anywhere. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. All right, that's it for the public comments. Let's see if we can get out of here by 9 o'clock. Go ahead, Tess.
All right, so that's Rena, and I'm all for more action items myself. So the document to track the GTLNC Plum Committee projects by LA City Planning case file number and address. I sent this to be included with the agenda. It didn't make it into the public documents, but just from listening tonight, I have added the date introduced column. as recommended by the young Mark Stevenson. Very clever, very good. And if you like, we can do a quick look at it on the screen. Shall we do a quick screen share and you guys give me your comments? And I'll explain. It's just basically a listing of the things that we keep seeing. Let's see. Can I do a quick screen share, Fred, or is that too problematic or potentially?
No, I think you can do it.
Okay, host enable screen sharing. Let me, all right, share screen. Oh, you just disabled it. So
What?
it was enabled a second ago. Okay, now I'm a host. Let's see if I can share screen. Okay, good. Here we go. All right, so share, good. All right. Tell me when you guys can see this. Wait, hang on. Why did it pause? Resume share. Hold on. Resume share. There we go. Can you guys see it?
Not yet.
No.
It says, why is it resume screen share? Tell me when you can see it. Looks to me like I'm sharing it.
No, I see a black screen.
What the hell is going on? Okay, let me
It
try.
might be loading.
Could be loading. Okay, share. Why have you paused my screen sharing, Fred? Because
No.
it says it says my screen sharing is paused, and yet I have done nothing to do that.
I don't know. On my screen, it says I'm viewing Tess Taylor's screen, but it's black.
It's
All I
on.
see,
Can-
all I see is that you started screen sharing, but you may have disabled.
Yeah, but for some reason it says that it's paused, yet I have not done anything to pause it. Okay, I'm trying it one more. What the heck is going
You
on?
can email it to me and I can
Can you
share
email
mine,
the documents?
Yeah, let me
or
email.
Fred or whatever.
Just in the sake of time, because it's getting late already. It's already 2.5 hours. Can we kind of wrap it up?
Okay, so Brandon, Brandon, I think I already showed this to you, but I've just added a column, spreadsheet.
While you're doing that, let me make one last comment. Arleta hasn't been screwed over yet. I grew up in Arleta as a little kid, and it's still a really nice community. You might want to drive by there and see how nice it is and how whatever their neighborhood council's doing. Thank you.
Okay, so Brandon, you should have it now. All right. And I apologize that my screen sharing is not working.
Okay. Fred, can you do the same thing for me? Can you make me host or?
Let me try. No, I can't because I gave my post privileges to Tess.
Oh my gosh, I could seize control of the meeting. Okay. Who can share? Only host. You know what? I'll put all panelists. So as long as you promise all of you not to put anything naughty on the screen, I have now enabled who can share, start sharing when someone else is sharing.
Okay, then I'll go ahead.
It looks like you've been enabled. Can you do it? Oh, there we go. Excellent. All right. So this is it, folks. Enlarge it just a little bit. So basically, this is to help Fred and Ren and whoever's putting together the agenda. Basically, if this is included, we can update it. We can put links, and then all you need to do is throw this up on the website, and we can reload it from time to time as it gets updated. So you see the date introduced to the far left column, the name of the project, the alternate names of the project description, because many projects have different names. Some projects have different names. The city planning case file number where available. I'll hyperlink it. It'll be easy. I can do this very easily. Then you see a list of state legislation down below. This is only in draft form, obviously. And then if you scroll a little bit further down, Brandon, then you see city items like city ordinances. And then we can just more easily keep track of things, not only in our committee, but amongst members of the public who may have an interest. That's it. And if you guys like, I can have this done and ready for the next meeting.
Thank you, Tess.
That's terrific,
Well
Tess.
done.
Thank you very much.
Anything
That's
you'd like to
really
see added?
let's think about it, but I think it's a
Well,
great
you know
start.
what? It'll be a work in progress. I'll be continually updating it. If anybody wants any items added, please let me know. And going forward, then this will make it easy on whoever's planning the agenda. You can cut and paste the links from this document and or always include this document as an attachment for folks who want more information. That's it for me. Thank you. Good
All right,
night.
that is very good, Tess. Thank you so much. That was a treasure trove of information. You are amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, Lee, you have your hand up. You want to make a last comment? Mr. Lee. Maybe his hand is up from last time. Okay, I guess that's it then. We're going to move on new business. We don't have anything in new business, so I don't know if we're going to add stuff or not. Otherwise, we'll adjourn the meeting.
I'd like to just make one quick item. This, maybe I should have mentioned this under the Riverside Drive project, which also includes the post office. I have now to date made 10 inquiries, that is 10 inquiries to the Congressman Sherman's office, gotten a few replies, but no further action. But I did finally speak today to a supervisor at our area, the Chandler City Post Office, a fellow by the name of Mario. And he says that the status of the Toluca Lake Post Office at this point is unknown, but it is very likely to stay. As far as he knows, they are not leaving, but I'm going to speak to his boss, for whom I got a phone number, given that, Ren, you had no luck, I guess, getting through to the Postmaster General. So now I have a name and a phone number, and I will keep plugging away until we have some better information on that. But Mario told me that the same sort of threat was happening with the Studio City Post Office, that their lease expired and they were going to be booted, but they're still there. And so that gives me hope that perhaps some semblance of our Toluca Lake Post Office will remain. To be continued. That's it from me.
Wow, that's great. And just for what it's worth, I've asked all the mailmen in the neighborhood and including behind the counter at the Toluca Lake, and nobody knows anything. They said they're not told anything at all, for what that's worth. But okay, so anything else?
That's it for me.
Okay, so I guess that's it then. Meeting adjourned at 9:01 p.m.
I second that motion.
Okay, and our next meeting will be Tuesday. No, not Tuesday. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Monday. Monday is June, what is it, 13th? What the hell day is that?
And Ren, will you ask Colby to get an update from beautification as to the disposition of the funds, or we can hear about that soon from Toluca Lake beautification?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And he needs to send email to, to Ryan and Shannon to make sure they're there, because they haven't been at the meeting for the last several months.
Good. And then we'll figure out some sort of action letter. There'll be so much action, your heads will be swimming. Very good. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay, guys, thank you very
Good
much.
night.
See you on June 13th.